storms through. Sonic the Hedgehog, don't doubt what he can do. Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic, he can really move. Sonic, he's got an attitude. Sonic, he's the fastest thing alive. He's the fastest thing alive. He's the fastest thing alive.
Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon. I loved this cartoon growing up. I always thought it was weird though that they decided to animate his eyes in a way where his pupils blink, but the whites of his eyes, they didn't sort of think to close them, which you saw in that intro. You keep an eye on that and you'll see it. I don't know why they decided to do that. It was always weird, but we'll cover the animation later on. There is now several cartoons of Sonic out there to choose from. Even when this show first aired, there was 2 Sonic cartoons that aired at roughly the same time. One was really silly. It was more of like a Looney Tunes and Animaniacs type show, with the Sonic characters sort of put in. You know, Sonic would dress up in disguises, and he could stretch his arm round the world, and you know, kind of really goofy Sonic. Cartoon type stuff. So it was a bit goofy, and I didn't particularly like it. And it was called The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, which didn't help matters because this is just simply called Sonic the Hedgehog. This one, but this show, Sonic the Hedgehog, was a lot darker, and it was later dubbed, you know, in the 2000s to distinguish itself from the 2 shows as SatAM. And this version was constantly buried by the silly version because Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog got more airtime, it was better advertised, and whenever people talked about a Sonic cartoon at the time, they were thinking of Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, and because it was so silly, a lot of people tuned out, and they didn't give this one a chance, which was probably the Sonic cartoon they wanted to see. Sega gave a lot more freedom to the lore of their characters back then. And it created some of the most interesting worlds for Sonic from the games. That is why we got things like the awesome quality and very cool UK Sonic the Comic publication. But I'll talk about that another day. Sonic the Hedgehog is a show where Dr. Robotnik comes to the planet Mobius, which is where they are, not Earth, Mobius. And he overthrows the animal people of the world by gaining the trust of the king. Only to banish him to a lost dimension, and then uses his technology to turn on the people of Mobius and turn them into robots loyal only to him. And then he turns the beautiful world and the city they lived in into his Robotropolis, polluting the world and draining it of its resources. So this is what makes this show interesting, because Robotnik has already won. He's already beaten and conquered the planet before Sonic was old enough to do anything about it. What this makes, it makes the show so much more interesting, because he owns the planet. He has all the resources and the weaponry and everything, and the characters are constantly outnumbered and against the challenges of what it is to go up against a dictator that rules everything. And there's only a handful of survivors left. Robotnik is the true ruler of everything, and it makes it so much cooler as a result. So Sonic leads the remaining freedom fighters in this cartoon in the fight against Robotnik, doing anything they can to slow his pollution of the planet and find ways to topple his evil rule. Episodes often tell stories of small missions to disrupt Robotnik's operations, like bombing runs on generators and intercepting convoys and things like that. But when you really think about it, that they don't really sort of go into it too much, but when you actually put it together as an adult, this would be nothing more than just an annoyance to Robotnik, like a fly buzzing around his head. It's all small fry to him. The good guys are kind of hanging on by a thread, which it's just so much cooler, and it actually makes Sonic better as a character. It is quite heartbreaking, some of the struggles they go through when they actually get into it, because a lot of the heroes friends and families have been enslaved by Robotnik and turned into weapons, basically. It's a bit like when you watch a zombie movie, you know, where your family member or a friend has been turned into a zombie, and they resemble what you used to know, but everything that made them up is now gone and they're just trying to kill you. That's kind of what Robotnik's actually doing with this roboticizing thing, and it's heartbreaking because it's this is a kids show, you know, but it parallels zombies, you know, where people have used to be your friends and family and now they're out to kill you and they're only loyal to Robotnik. So it's quite dark in that regard. The show runs for 2 seasons and has some great unique characters as well as excellent portrayals of the characters from the video game. So let's go through some of those characters right now. I'm pretty sure you guys all know this guy. You know Sonic, he's the classic portrayal of the character. He's impatient, he's big-headed, he acts first and asks questions later. Sonic is the hedgehog of attitude kind of era that he was in the 90s. He's a flawed hero that makes the show more interesting to watch as a result because of the world he's in. Sonic is vulnerable through his shortcomings as he tries to solve everything with his speed and his overconfidence that he's going to get the job done. But it's like I said, because the world has already been conquered by Robotnik, it doesn't work. And as a result of him constantly getting in trouble or overconfident in his abilities, it makes the other characters more relevant, helping him out, and it just makes a more compelling show as a whole. But the writers put him in really interesting situations where he doesn't always win, and it is always a desperate struggle. And the voice actor does such a great job at portraying Sonic as a character, trying to prove that he's too cool for school, but you can't help perhaps but think it's all a front in this kind of character in this world, because the situation is so dire and they're fighting every day to struggle to survive, that everyone kind of looks to Sonic for hope, and he acts big-headed and confident to raise everyone's spirits, to try and prove it's not really that bad. Look at me, if it was that bad I'd be crying in the corner, but I'm kind of showing off and I'm you know, big-headed, so there's nothing to worry about, and that makes the character more likeable in my opinion. You have Sally Acorn, who's basically the yin to Sonic's yang. Sally is the brains of the group. She plans a lot of the strike missions on Robotnik's bases and organises the group to give them more strategic advances against the overwhelming odds of Robotnik's army. And it's clear without Sally, the team would have been defeated a long time ago, because of what she brings to the team. Keeps their dreams and hopes alive of having freedom within Sally. She's the princess of Mobius, so when Robotnik overthrew the king and sent her father to this dimension, she doesn't really sort of act like a princess and feels that you know, that's unneeded in this current world, which is kind of cool. And she's not like your Princess Peach kind of damsel in distress, which was great to see. And she's probably more fierce, probably even more fierce than Sonic himself against the Battle of Robotnik, to be fair. She's incredibly resourceful, far from a damsel in distress, as I said. And her best lines and scenes are often bring Sonic's massive ego down to size and outsmarting him, and the banter between the two characters. It very, very well written for a 90s cartoon show. And it was great to see a female character in 1993 get to be as cool as she was and not sort of take a sidestep for the boys. So yeah, I like that. Hardcore Sonic fans often hate on Sally for overshadowing characters that are actually in the game, such as Tails and Amy Rose. But I always thought she was a lot more three-dimensional than a lot of those characters, and more interesting contrast to Sonic, where other characters like Amy run after Sonic because he's cool and that's about all that drives them. Sally can not only hold her own, but she complements Sonic's personality, so he himself becomes more funny, and what he says is more funny, but because of what Sally sort of sets his jokes up or brings him down to size and sort of makes him more relatable, rather than just literally just being a douche who's showing off all the time. So that's what I think about Sally. Then you got Antoine. He's the comic relief of the show. All these 90s cartoons had him. He's a soldier of the Royal Guard. a stickler for routine and processes, and often conflicts with Sonic's carefree attitude. As the two fight over the affections of Sally, we have some of Antoine's best moments when Sally kind of teases Sonic that she might be more interested in Antoine rather than Sonic, and especially when Antoine actually gets one over on Sonic, because it never looks like it's ever going to happen, but it happens more than you realise in the show, and Sonic's like, what? How can this guy possibly be better than me? And again, it's because this character exists that you get those moments, which I think is more interesting. Antoine is often in over his head and is a coward in the face of danger. He does his best to throw himself into battle for the love of Princess Sally and the freedom of Mobius, but often gets into more trouble than good, only achieving victory through bumbling efforts, which he tries to pass off as doing things on purpose. And this is actually done quite well. It's not something that's new. There's other shows and movies that have done it before, but he'll trip over and press a button that will help the team and that kind of thing. But it's actually quite funny, and because he kind of I meant to do that in his style. It actually works quite well. Bunny Rabbit, there she is. She's a rabbit with a Southern Belle accent, so she uses phrases like sugar and hoo-wee and that kind of stuff, much like the original Rogue from X-Men or Jessie from Toy Story. It never really explains how she got robotic legs and an arm, but it's kind of hinted that she was kind of rescued before the Robotnik's roboticizer finished the process, or in some lore it says that she was seriously injured and they kind of used the machine to sort of fix her up and rescue her life. But it never really sort of goes into too much depth about what happened, and probably because it was, again, pretty dark. And there's some really impressive strength moments where she uses her limbs to sort of wrestle giant robotic robots and smash doors open and stuff like that because of her limbs. Her limbs are also extendable, so she can go to great heights and punch from a long distance, which is pretty cool. She's always upbeat. And even though she's the most misfortunate of all the team, she brings a kind of happy-go-lucky kind of feel to it. Unfortunately, she doesn't get much development in the show, apart from the first couple of episodes and just sort of raising people's spirits, whereas the rest of the cast tend to have story arcs as such. But when she is on screen, she makes a huge impact, and she's a kick-ass powerhouse character of the group, so she's pretty cool. Dulcie and Rota. Rota, the guy at the front, is a shy mechanic of the team. He tends to fix the vehicles the freedom fighters needs and turns things they steal from Robotnik into something useful. They also add Dulcie, which is the dragon in the background, which damages his character no end, because you say Rota was the guy responsible for creating the vehicles that they drive and helping the team get around and that kind of stuff. And then Dulcie was brought in to sort of to be the aircraft or the mode of transportation for Sonic and the crew. She's very much a one-note kind of character, where she has this joke where she can't land, so she always bangs her head, and then she sort of does this joke where she says, "Oh, Mum, can I have a few more hours in bed, please?" And that's all she does. But she's literally there to transport the characters from place to place, which means that Rota's purpose disappears as a result. Once that's taken away, he's got no point of being there. And with Sally being very intelligent and a tech head of it in her own right, that again takes away from Rota, which is a shame because he was quite a cool, lovable kind of character. Also in the show is Tails, and again I think this is a really interesting take on Tails. I quite like Tails now, where he kind of almost acts like Sally in some ways, kind of being banter to Sonic's big head, which does work. It's been proven it works. But in this show, Tails is a lot younger than in a lot of the other characters. His arc is very much a coming-of-age story where he tries to persuade people he's ready for the fight, but he's not quite old enough to actually do the big fighting. And he has to pluck up the courage to fight Robotnik, and it's all big and scary. But when he's in episodes, he doesn't really do too much in the way of combat, but he has enough impact for fans of the character to say, yep, that's pretty cool. Tails has made an impact on the show. The other star of this show is Robotnik, and I think this is probably the best portrayal of this character I've seen in any media. Robotnik tends to be quite a comic relief character because in the games he's explained to have a huge IQ but with a childlike tendency, and a lot of the media focuses on the fact that he's kind of like a big kid with a giant brain, whereas in this he is very dark, he's very evil, and he's voiced brilliantly by the guy who does the guard in Aladdin, the guy that chases Aladdin around as one of the guards. But he's not just laughing and going, "Oh, I'm evil, ha ha ha." He'll say things, "It warms the cockles of my black heart," and it's so well done. And I love whenever he's on screen, he just steals the scenes. He has a certain finesse to his vocabulary. Like I said before, he has already won, so his resources are vast. Most of the planet is polluted and covered in these mechanical cities. His eyes and ears are everywhere, and he knows it's just a matter of time before Sonic and the team are stamped out, and he portrays that, knowing that it's futile, they're eventually going to lose. But the thorn in his side is so aggravating, i.e. Sonic the Hedgehog, that it constantly distracts him from the bigger picture, that he can't quite stamp out this last resistance members, which drives him insane. Side note to this character, I always thought this was quite interesting to further the dark tone of the technology he has. This roboticizer thing that he has that turns living things into robots, rubbing them with their senses and turning them into slaves and things. I always thought it was a bit strange, like the robot standing behind him. All the animals that are turned into robots kind of look like themselves still. Kind of just roboticized versions of themselves. But I always wondered where the big tool robots are, and I just thought it was always interesting. They're called SWAT bots. I thought it was interesting. It's kind of like maybe he conquered Earth, turned all of Earth's people into these SWAT bot robots, and then stormed Mobius and took that over. And now he's kind of using what were Earthlings to sort of take over Mobius as a different thing. I just thought that was always kind of quite a dark theory that I thought was quite cool. There's some environmental storytelling right there. Yeah, I mean, I made that up completely. I don't know if it's true, but it just makes you wonder, because none of the other robots look like humans except for them. So maybe those SWAT bots are old humans that he's conquered, and this is just his next planet that he wants to suck the resources out of. But he's a great character. I think he's fantastic. Placing Sonic in a world where he's struggling to survive really improves that character for me. Basing the story on what Robotnik is doing and what he's doing to the planet and its inhabitants, I think is always much more compelling than collecting 7 collectible MacGuffins and getting them to do whatever they need to do to save the day. I just think something like this is always going to be more compelling than what they constantly do these days with collecting the Chaos Emeralds. The 2 seasons run does finish on a small cliffhanger. There's some eyes that sort of glow in the distance for a bad guy that's going to turn up, and it could have been Knuckles potentially. I think they say in the documentary that it's a different character entirely, but it's not really big enough of a cliffhanger to ruin anything. And as the show was cancelled shortly after, the characters such as Sally and Bunny and Antoine were continued over in the American comics, the Archie comics, for those who may or may not know. And they continued their adventures on for many, many years after the fact. Which, to be fair, I haven't read too much of, but I've heard the quality varies, and they were pretty much given free range again on what to do with them. And that comic book goes off in some very strange territories. They do some strange stuff with those characters. Shortly after that, Sega took more of a firm control on the franchise. After the Dreamcast launches, where all these different regions that had different variations of the characters was kind of like scrapped and retconned. So Sega just said, nope, you're not doing that anymore. You are taking the Japanese portrayal of these characters, and we're making that the same across the board, for better or for worse. Which meant we lost a lot of this uniqueness and some of the interesting parts of what people actually done good for this series. and that's why Robotnik was suddenly called Eggman, and there was more focus on like the Dragon Ball Z comparisons with Shadow and Silver and the Chaos Emeralds. Sonic's world wasn't Mobius anymore; it was Earth, that kind of stuff. Sonic was always, I think I could safely say Sonic was always cooler when Robotnik had already conquered the planet, and every episode was almost like a struggle, like you'd got one last ring left, and you were struggling to hold on to that ring to finish the level. That's where Sonic's at its best. Vagrus says, don't get started on Ken Penders. He's a character. Actually, how involved was he on the show? I think he picked up afterwards, but I don't know for certain, Vagrus. Again, I didn't do... I haven't prepared for the comic books, and I read a lot of all of that a long time ago, so I don't want to make any comments that are not accurate. I'd have to go back and have a look first. So it's an average commitment because it's 2 seasons, so it's not like an hour and a half movie. And by the way, this scoring system, it doesn't mean anything's bad or good. It's just to give you an indication of if you wanted to try it, what you're letting yourself in for. So it's an average commitment because it's 2 seasons, 26 episodes, I think. Let me just check that. Because I've got it here. There we go. 26 episodes, so it's not massive. About an average commitment to a show as far as I'm concerned. The pace is very strong. There are a few experimental episodes and things where go off on a tangent. But for the most part, the pace sticks to what it does very well. And there is plenty of attempts where the show writers try to expand the world, but they are constantly restrained to stay on as kid-friendly as possible. So they don't get to fully utilise all these potential story arcs that they wanted to do. Much to the Archie comics, to be fair, because they were stuck on a kid-friendly anamorphic series when they wanted to do superheroes and grown-up topics, I suppose. The animation is average because it starts so well. The world is so well drawn, and it looks horrible. And there's a area of Mobius where Robotnik just can't get to, where the lot of the heroes wait out, called Nuthole. And they retreat there, and that's where they live. And that looks really beautiful, and you can imagine that being in the Green Hill Zone. But most of it is Robotnik's world of where everything's been dried up and sucked dry, and these massive metal structures, which look so good. But then, like I said, they made and designed characters that look really goofy, which are supposed to be a big threat, and they look so stupid. They really aren't. And later on, as they go through the series, I don't know if they were running out of budget or they had to do things quick to try and stay relevant. I don't know. But there are a few kind of animation bits where they just didn't quite hit the highs of what they had at the beginning of it. So I'm not saying the animation is bad. I'm just saying it's inconsistent, and it's difficult to give it a higher rating based on the fact that it doesn't always hold up. The voice acting, again, is very distinctive. Each character has... They put so much... It's so well... Like, especially the banter between Sally and Sonic. They do a great job at expressing all these characters in just through voice alone. And each character is very distinctive in the way they're approached. And I love the voice actors in this. They do such a great job. Again, especially Robotnik and how well he's done. So very distinctive, very, very good. Again, it's just let down by some of the non-main characters. Not all of them. Some of them are quite good, but some of the non-main characters do sound a bit out there, and it might be more because they look a bit goofy rather than the voice actors, to be fair. As for the ending, like I said, it does end on a small cliffhanger. I always like to think that you can play Sonic 1 and 2 and then watch this show and then play Sonic 3, and the cliffhanger kind of solves itself to a certain degree, but I mean that's kid me talking there. But it is answered in the documentary on this DVD that I got, that what they were going to do with that, and it's no big deal. It's not as if something was going to be groundbreaking. The biggest plot points are tied up quite nicely. So if you are going to watch the show, 26 episodes will give you the best parts of the show tied it up nicely in a bow. But it's what they could have done and gone on to afterwards that you'd have to probably go into the Archie comics, and that's where things get a bit ropey and whether you'll be happy with that. But for the most part, the ending's really good. But it's just a shame that some of the best characters that Sonic's ever known are locked away in this kind of Archie, Sonic the Hedgehog, SatAM world. And I think although Sonic's kind of finding his feet again, if they were going to do 3D Sonics, I think it would work a lot better in this world than they are currently trying to get it with the other variations of Sonic, in my opinion.